All right. Well, it looks like we are in business here. Hello, good evening. Welcome, everyone, to the latest forum in our Issues That Matter series. Tonight, our topic is Digital Dilemmas Understanding Modern Policing. This series is presented by the Central Arkansas Library System, the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County, and Little Rock Public Radio, KYR 89.1. I'm Daniel Breen, News Director of Little Rock Public Radio, and I will be guiding our discussion this evening. This Zoom forum is being recorded for a later broadcast on KYR with air dates to be announced. And before I introduce our panelists for this evening, I would like to thank both the Central Arkansas Library System and the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County for partnering up with us on this event. I'd also like to just give a brief explanation over the format. We will be asking our panelists a variety of questions, but we also want to hear from you, our viewers. So if you do have a question, please use the chat function on Zoom to ask it. We'll also be monitoring our Facebook and YouTube streams. So if you're watching through those and leave a question there, we should be able to see those as well. All of our panelists tonight received our topics and questions ahead of time so that they could prepare, come with ideas, statistics, whatever they would like to bring to the table this evening. And for each question asked, we will leave it up to participants to answer the questions and comment on each other's inputs. No strict rules here. This is not a debate. And then we will move on to our next question. Well, without further ado, please help me welcome our participants to the forum. First up, we have Connor Thompson. He is the program director of the Enhanced Community Policing Project, part of the Center for Racial Justice and Criminal Justice Reform at the UA Little Rock William H. Bowen School of Law. And we also have on the panel this evening, Mark Edwards. He is a spokesperson for the Little Rock Police Department. We want to thank you both very much for joining us this evening. So I will get right into it, and I will start in the order I'd introduced you all. So Connor, you'll weigh in first, and then Mr. Edwards, you'll go after that. This question is a little bit more tailored to Mr. Edwards, but Mr. Thompson, if you could just give us a broad overview as to what you know of what sort of technology currently exists in policing and the LRPD here.
Well, thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Danielle, and to CALS and the Little Rock Public Radio and the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County for having me, and Mr. Edwards for joining the conversation. As far as the type of technology that exists both in policing and Little Rock Police Department in particular, I think it's worth keeping in mind in the beginning that quite a lot of what the police do is actually collecting, storing, and processing information. And this pretty much goes back to when police departments began to be professionalized. And when we think of new technologies, often it's facilitating this process of collecting, storing, and processing information. So when you think, and that goes back to, you can think about fingerprinting being a type of technology that facilitates this process in, the early 20th century. But a few that, a non-exhaustive list of kind of technologies that we are seeing employed in the Little Rock Police Department, and Mr. Edwards can certainly correct me or expand on this list. We've seen automated license plate readers. These tend to come from a company called called Flock Safety, and the cameras are called Falcon cameras. We see ShotSpotter, which is an acoustic technology that's meant to pick up, the sounds of gunshots and direct police to neighborhoods where those are occurring. And that comes from a company called Sound Thinking. Body-worn cameras are used. Axon is the big company that's utilized there. And I'm at each one of these, I'm emphasizing the fact that these are often companies that are supplying the use of these technologies. I think that'll come up again later in our conversation. I also just want to mention the Arkansas State Fusion Center. And so this is a facility that's located in Little Rock that's operated by local and state law enforcement in collaboration with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. And that serves as a kind of command center for gathering, analyzing, and disseminating intelligence of different kinds. And we really saw the Fusion Center utilized during the 2020 racial justice protests kind of as a form of information sharing and surveillance. And a lot of this technology, I'll just finish by saying, was purchased using federal COVID relief funds. The 2021 American Rescue Plan Act was a form of federal funding that was really utilized by the city of Little Rock to purchase a lot of this particular equipment that I just named earlier. Body-worn cameras tends to be more Department of Justice grants. And so I would just have folks thinking about, if we utilized ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act federal funds, this one-time COVID-related funding to purchase a lot of this equipment, thinking about when these new technologies come due and, where future sources of funding are going to come from to maintain these technologies.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Edwards, you're up.
Thank you, Connor and Danielle, Cals, and everyone for inviting me. Yeah, you were right. I think the one that I didn't hear was drone technology that we're using. That's a new one for us. But from an overview standpoint, you're correct. Body-worn cameras, that is more DOJ, I think funding, if I'm not mistaken. I think you were right on that. The LPRs is what we call them, the license plate readers. Those are the flock cameras. ShotSpotter is also technology. So yeah, we're using a wide array of technology right now in policing because we're a data-driven agency.
All right. Thank you all both for that comprehensive rundown. And then going next to you, Mr. Edwards, the next question this evening, sort of going off of that, what advancement in technology has had, in your opinion, the biggest impact on policing in the past couple of decades?
Well, this is a toss-up answer. When I saw the question, I think it may not be that technology at all, other than social media. I think social media began as something for young kids to play on, and it became quickly the way to spread information now. And so when you're dealing with the media on a daily basis like myself, you have to find better ways to get your information out. So we started to use more of our platforms, our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X, whichever one you're calling it these days. We wanted to find a way. We got a podcast now, which I'm very proud of. Where we once a month we have a topic. We have some police officers on talking about different topics. So we have to find better ways to get the information out there. And I think social media, the way it's integrated with policing and getting information out, is probably, in my opinion, definitely the biggest at this point. The new software, the flock cameras, those are all new. But up until this point, the last 10 to 15 years, just the evolution of social media for me.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Edwards. And Mr. Thompson, again, the question, what is the biggest technological advancement that's had the biggest impact on policing in the past few years, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think social media is a great answer. When I saw this question, what came to mind for me is really the proliferation of body-worn cameras. I think we've really seen in the last decade, body-worn cameras really fundamentally changing how we understand police incidents, particularly use of force incidents. If we have video, for accountability and kind of sort of being able to see what happened. And this really started, I say, within the last 10 years, because I think we really saw an expansion of body-worn cameras at the beginning of the Black Lives Matter protests, when it was still, 2014 and 2015 with Ferguson. And there was definitely calls during the Obama administration for the Department of Justice to fund officers, wearing these cameras and putting a lot of grant money into their adoption across different agencies. So I think just the fact that those videos exist, I think we still need to ask questions about the custodianship of those videos, now that they are pretty ubiquitous, especially in, large city departments. what is the process for, the families and the public to get access to that footage, I think is still a question for us in 2024.
All right.
Well, if I can expand on that, I'll say this. I know our chiefs in the past have brought families in if they wanted to see the video and talk to them about different things when it's available. Of course, a lot of times uh, it's for investigative purposes. So until the investigation is complete, we can't really have access to it. But I think a lot of times in certain situations, our chiefs have had no problem bringing the families in.
All right. Sounds good. Well, next question going again to you, Connor Thompson. What safeguards exist to ensure that the technology that is used in policing isn't encroaching on the right to privacy or our civil liberties?
Well, being an attorney, I'll have to start with the Constitution of the United States. I think they would take away my law license if I didn't begin there. So really, Fourth Amendment rights, the Bill of Rights is really what governs a lot of the privacy and civil liberties concerns involving, police investigative uses of technology. So the Fourth Amendment is a prohibition on unreasonable searches and seizures without a warrant. So we saw we have the Fourth Amendment being, written in the 18th century and being, written for these general warrants that the British Crown was imposing on the early American colonists, and we saw the basically resentment of these general warrants and broad search authority being written in the Fourth Amendment. So ever since then, we've seen different Supreme Court cases kind of adapt this Fourth Amendment unreasonable searches and seizures without a warrant requirement, for new technologies in different times and eras. And so, some of the big cases involved, in the mid 20th century, the use of wiretapping in a phone booth. But the one that I would really highlight is a particular case from 2018 called Carpenter versus the United States. And so this was a case involving police department seeking cell site records. And essentially the court decided that these cell site records were so ubiquitous that they allowed the police to track a person's movements and location, so comprehensively that it essentially violated the unreasonable search requirement by saying that individuals have a reasonable expectation of privacy. And so essentially the use of the cell site data was so comprehensive that the court found that it violated this reasonable expectation of privacy standard. And so in cases like that, the Supreme Court will decide one of these, every couple of decades, and then really the lower courts kind of say, okay, well, if that crosses the line, what are these other cases that, using the guidance that we're getting from the courts to decide these things. So you could sort of see how something like, these automated license plate readers, different forms of technology could sort of be comparable to this cell site data, where if you have a surveillance system that's comprehensive enough, it could end up effectively allowing, law enforcement agents to comprehensively track the movements of people. So that's sort of at the very, high level, but the Constitution is the floor. That's the minimum that's required under law, that can't be violated. States and cities can actually pass laws and ordinance that are more restrictive, that they can say, we are going to require that our law enforcement agencies under our jurisdiction, have to respect privacy or place limitations on what they can do in an investigation, even beyond what the United States Constitution requires. And so we sometimes see, particular towns and cities passing ordinances saying, we're going to place limits, guardrails on new uses of technology, and go beyond the minimum requirements under the Fourth Amendment and the Constitution.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mark Edwards, the question again, and interested to hear from the sort of the standpoint of training in policing. What safeguards exist to ensure that technology used in policing isn't encroaching on the right to privacy or civil liberties?
Well, I think for us, it's fairly simple. Eh, every view, every movement, every camera, everything we do is tracked, and from a training standpoint, our officers are taught to deal with just about every situation out there. How we're dealing with it is really most important to us. So any situation we come across that isn't handled the way it should, we address that in training as well. So for us, it's really just about the transparency of everything, because everything we're doing is videotaped and it's tracked. And from another standpoint, such as our real-time crime center, we have limited access. Few detectives are in there. I'd invite you guys down if you get some time. You'll get together, call me. I'll you can come down and see how of the detectives that are working in there, they're actually working on things. And until a notice comes up, a flock camera reads a stolen vehicle, you would know which camera to look. There's hundreds. You would know which camera to look at. So from that aspect, uh, that's kind of how we handle things.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Edwards. If you all are just tuning in, you're watching Issues That Matter: Digital Dilemmas, Understanding Modern Policing. The series is presented by the Central Arkansas Library System, the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County, and Little Rock Public Radio. This virtual forum is being recorded for broadcast and will air at a later date on KUAR FM 89.1. Our guests this evening are Mark Edwards, who you just heard from. He is a spokesperson for the Little Rock Police Department, and Connor Thompson, Program Director for the Enhanced Community Policing Project, the Center for Racial Justice and Criminal Justice Reform at the UA Little Rock William H. Bowen School of Law. Moving on to our next question this evening, and we will start with you again, Mr. Edwards. Artificial intelligence, a very hot topic these days, can be used for quote unquote predictive policing to better identify patterns that would lead a person to commit a crime. What is the state of this technology now, and what do you envision its future, its use to be?
Well, at this point, I don't know many agencies that are using AI at this point, but I do know it is a technology that's out there. It's a tool that's out there for us. We're not using it at the Little Rock Police Department. So, but every year at the NIOA conferences I attend and some of the other trainings I attend, it's talked about. Just haven't moved in that direction.
Okay, and if you don't mind, what do you envision that future use being?
Well, I've got for one, I had to learn more about how artificial intelligence is going to be used in policing. There's so much technology out there for us, just trying to get a grasp on everything that we have at this point. Our flock cameras, integrating with school systems, integrating, registering cameras with people who have Ring doorbells. I mean, we've got so much technology that we're just trying to get a grasp of that we already have in hand. So we're really focused on trying to just get that and make that a tool that we can use in everyday policing.
All right,
But
thank you very much.
I'm sure when AI comes available, we'll invest in some of that too.
Okay. Yes, we will see. And then Connor Thompson, again, the question, what's the state of AI in policing and predictive policing now, and what do you envision the future to be?
Yeah, the primary company that's out there used to be known as Predpol, like short for predictive policing. It's now called Geolytica. So if you Google and look up different, especially larger city police departments, that have used this technology. But essentially, the idea behind predictive policing is relying on an algorithm to interpret police records, analyzing arrest and parole data, that'll send police officers to particular areas identified as hotspots, or and hotspots is kind of a term of art. It's sort of like a place where there's been a trend of offenses that have been seen, and where they believe new offenses would be likely to occur. And I think the critics of predictive policing, of algorithmic use of deploying officers, is kind of the idea that you're sending an armed agent of the state to target particular places and people based on these kind of predictive factors rather than individualized probable cause. So it's a lot of the similar risks that you see kind of with the ShotSpotter technology of where individuals are deployed. In this case, there's this sort of aspect of the algorithms almost being a self-fulfilling or self-replicating kind of situation where you keep sending people to the same places, and then that becomes the data that determines that you keep sending people where to go, and it can operate as a kind of vicious cycle. So as Mr. Edwards said, we currently don't utilize this technology in Little Rock. But I think, if we saw Geolitica or similar companies, coming up, if the Little Rock City Board of Directors or the city manager were to, take up this issue, we can see how larger cities have fared with this technology. I think one advantage of being a smaller city is, we can kind of see how the Chicagos and Los Angeleses and New Yorks and other places, have utilized this, seen how scholars have researched the effectiveness of this technology, seen what harms and benefits may come from it. And I would hope that that would enable us to have us as residents of Little Rock to have a pretty vigorous debate about what the findings of these different technologies have been. And some cities, one in particular, Santa Cruz, California, have actually banned predictive policing as well as facial recognition technology. So as I was saying earlier, cities can enact ordinances that are more restrictive of what police can do, and also more, I guess, protective, if another way of putting it, of sort of individual privacy and civil liberties through the ordinance process. So I would say that if I were to predict that, I would agree with Mr. Edwards that it's probably likely that we would see this kind of technology working its way to Little Rock. But I think we should see what other cities' experiences have been using it, and look at how data scientists and empirical researchers have what kind of findings they've made of this technology.
Okay, thank you very much. And going back to you again, Connor Thompson, next question this evening. How do we ensure that policing technology is cost effective? How do you quantify, I guess, that impact that it has on public safety? I know we were talking a little bit earlier about the sort of funding breakdown, how a lot of this is coming from federal funds. So yeah, just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think I'll defer a little bit on this question to Mr. Edwards, but I will just toss in a comment that, I think often this type of, technological, utilizing this kind of technology in policing tends to be most attractive at periods sort of like we're seeing now of, hiring being down, of sort of seeing technology sometimes as, an enhancement to perhaps, a police force that is, stretched thin by their standards. So I think I would think about this in a little bit different way, which is to kind of take a situation we're in now where we're seeing rapid uptake of new technology, maybe difficulty with hiring and retention, as an opportunity to kind of understand, to broaden our understanding of what public safety means. I've been really heartened in recent weeks to see the city of Little Rock create its new public safety commission. I think they just designated the first 10 members of that commission recently, and sort of encouraged the city to look at how, funding can be used to address, broadly the root causes of different forms of, violence, the types of problems that I think we sort of historically have said these are, narrowly police problems. These are narrowly something where we need, an aggressive enforcement standpoint, and be able to look at this and say, perhaps with this public safety commission, we can look at broader and more holistic solutions to these kinds of problems and fund them adequately.
Well, I agree with you, Connor, wholeheartedly. It's really kind of hard to quantify the impact. Many times it's a catch-22 for police officers. If we want more results, you have to get better equipment, and that means the new flock cameras that we have. So we're thanks to the mayor and the city board, I mean, we've been able to get a lot of the technology and upgrade and a lot of cameras throughout the city that we needed to do our jobs better. So from that aspect, better equipment, pits better results. So for us, it gives us a better opportunity. So I don't know how you would quantify, uh, the results versus what you paid for it. But it's definitely better. The better equipment we have, the better results we can provide. And that's from an analysis and data as well. I mean, we're a data-driven agency. So, we look at where a lot of high traffic areas, we look at areas, hot spots, as you said earlier. Some spots, some places are historically hot spots. So we know to have resources in those areas at certain times. We get tips. So we know to have resources in those areas, but to quantify, it's just a catch-22 for us sometimes.
All right. Well, thank you both for your insight on that question. And while we're on the subject of technology, going back to you again, Mark Edwards, tell us a little bit about the Little Rock Police Department's Real-Time Crime Center. Describe to us just a little bit about what that is and how that process of rolling it out and now eventually using it has been going.
We started it, I want to say the State Fair of 2022. That was the first time we actually used it. The Real-Time Crime Center it's a center inside of headquarters that has, like I said, up to 6 detectives can sit down with multiple screens in front of them and 2 giant screens in the room as well. And what you're working on, stolen vehicles that have been reported stolen, when they hit the flock cameras, they pull up on the big screens where you're able to see which area that car just went through. You can tell which direction it's going. We're able to find the nearest officer and say, hey, there's a green Chevy coming up. It's about to turn right on Geyer Springs. That's a stolen vehicle. So we've done a really, really good job with using our technology for stolen vehicles in the area, as well as track missing persons. So, when you get calls from other agencies about people in different vehicles. So our technology at the Real-Time Crime Centers has been extremely beneficial to us in that aspect. For one, we have what we call Connect Little Rock, where we are asking that people with Ring doorbell cameras or any video camera doorbell system you have, you can register with us. And what that means is, a lot of people tend to think that we can look into your phone, your cameras. We can't. But what it means for us is, in the past, if some sort of crime happened on the street you live on now, there would be a police officer that would come door to door, knock. If you're not there, they would leave a card for you to call them. You'd call them the next day, next 2 days. They'd ask if you've seen anything odd. Well, now, if you register your camera with us, when something happens on your street, I know Daniel has a camera. I know Connor has a camera. I can send them an email and say, hey, look on your camera. If you see anything weird that you feel like sharing, drop it in this. That way, it takes away the walking door to door. It allows us to, people don't see us on your streets. a uniformed officer. It allows you to be able to drop video into a Dropbox and give us that access so we can see what we're looking at and what we need to work with. So the real-time crime center is extremely beneficial. When cameras are integrated, businesses, um, robberies that happening in your store, or in some of our cases, we have the integrated with some of the schools. So if the schools call us and say, hey, we're having some issues, someone's heard something on, in our building C, we have your floor plans. So we can go to building C, look at those cameras, see where to deploy our resources. If our officers are there, we can say, hey, go in the east entrance. The room is 305, go to the third floor. We can get everybody out of the first floor and the second floor. So it gives us access and information to give our officers who are on the ground. It's been really beneficial. It's only been up about a year, and we're still working with people.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Edwards. And I am glad you mentioned also the Connect Little Rock program. I forgot to mention that, include that in my question. Connor Thompson, I know you are not, you do not work for the LRPD, but any thoughts that you have on the Real-Time Crime Center and the Connect Little Rock program?
Absolutely. I'll just kind of expand a little bit on what Mr. Edwards was saying about Connect Little Rock. So this is an initiative, and really, I guess a good place to begin with thinking about both the Real-Time Crime Center and this Connect Little Rock initiative is that I got the impression that the current chief, Heath Helton, has really been an advocate for these particular expansions in technology for a big part of his career, at least in recent years. Unlike many police chiefs with LRPD who get recruited from other cities, Chief Helton came up through the ranks. I think he's a 27-year veteran of the Little Rock Police Department. And I know that, when he was still an assistant chief, getting these technologies up and going was, a main priority for him. So it doesn't surprise me that since he's been chief, we've really seen an emphasis placed on having the crime center, expanding this Connect Little Rock program. And so a little bit more about the Connect Little Rock. That is operated through a contract with a company called Fusus LLC. So they're the kind of third party that's providing the technology and the infrastructure for that program. It's operated through a contract with the city of Little Rock, approved by the board of directors and signed off by the manager. And so, I emphasize these contracts and thinking about, identifying who these what these companies are, because if you're thinking about, as residents of Little Rock, having accountability and thinking about where we can have debates about the uses of these technologies, there is some political oversight through a board of directors, or if you're speaking about the county and about sheriff's office, you think about quorum courts. These are elected representatives voted by the residents of the cities and the counties that they serve, and so these places where we have contracts are an area where, if you wanted to make it known to your elected representative that, we wanted some kind of oversight or accountability for the use of these technologies, that's a place where you can do it. But the only thing I think I'll add otherwise about Connect Little Rock, so as Mr. Edwards said, it's largely a voluntary program. It relies on private cameras. So as he mentioned, the kind of ring cameras that people frequently have at their houses, as well as different businesses having like closed circuit television cameras, things like that. And a recent legal, or I guess not so much legal, but a policy change that was announced was that Amazon, which operates and owns the Ring camera system, would no longer facilitate warrantless requests for video footage to be served up to police. So essentially, if law enforcement agencies want to utilize a Ring camera, they'll typically go through, some kind of legal process like obtaining a warrant, or they'll ask the individual involved, because you can still consent and give over your footage. But just this system in particular, the Connect Little Rock system, the Fusus contract, is very much modeled after a similar system we see in New Orleans. And you can look up, some reporting that's been done about the network of cameras that are used by the New Orleans Police Department.
New Orleans, Atlanta, Jonesboro has one as well. So we've kind of patterned ours after some of those guys.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all very much for your answers to that. If you all are just tuning in, you are watching Issues That Matter, Digital Dilemmas, Understanding Modern Policing. This is a series presented by the Central Arkansas Library System, the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County, and Little Rock Public Radio. Just a reminder to our audience members as we near the end of our broadcast this evening, please put any questions you have for our panelists in the Q&A box, not the chat function. I misspoke earlier today. Thank you, Danielle, for correcting that. So please put it in the Q&A function on Zoom, and we will have some time for questions from the audience at the end of our program tonight. Well, moving on to our next pre-written question, going back to you again, Connor Thompson. In the future, if artificial intelligence, AI, does take more of a role in policing, how would we go about ensuring that specific communities, specifically the Black, Brown, neurodivergent communities, how would we go about ensuring that those people aren't unfairly targeted by AI?
I think the most important thing to keep in mind with any of these technologies is that algorithms are never bias-free. I think there can be a misapprehension that because it's an algorithm, because it's new technology, that somehow we're, encoding the bias of policing that can occur away. But really, these algorithms, these tools, they'll always reflect the priorities of the people who are using them. And I'll just say that, surveillance technology is not evenly distributed throughout the city of Little Rock. So when you actually, I can encourage listeners to take a look at where, different ShotSpotter cameras and acoustic system, not cameras, because ShotSpotter is the acoustic system, where those are located. If they go onto Wired, it's a magazine, wired.com, they put out a story with a headline, "Here are the secret locations of ShotSpotter gunfire sensors." And that particular story, you can pull up a map of, at the time of where there was this leak of different ShotSpotter data, it pinpoints the locations of a lot of these different acoustic systems. And you can zoom into the city of Little Rock and take a look at, at least at the time of that leak. I can't speak to, today on March, 21st, where all of these sensors are located. But they tended to congregate in, and be amassed in a particular area of the city, south of Interstate 630, east of University. So I think when you think about, the history of Little Rock, of different kinds of de facto segregation that exists in, a very, frankly, segregated city in terms of geography, in terms of, where people have been, are able to live due to, their ability to support themselves, the different role that different freeways have had in separating people in the city. I think there's a real risk that this existing geographic and class and race-based, disproportionate locations of different people can feed into the algorithms that are put in, or feed into where these cameras end up being. I think we've seen some troubling comments by past city boards of directors members about, wanting to see, a police state in certain parts of the city, and they're usually not referring to the particular parts of Little Rock where they live. So there's a real risk that when you're already heavily patrolling areas where people are largely engaged in behavior that is classified as criminal. What gets noticed and unnoticed, what gets reported and unreported based on just the amount of attention that gets placed there. And I think you could see a multiplying effect perhaps with algorithms being utilized here. And the other thing I'll just mention is, I constantly mentioning the names of these companies because, they're ultimately trying to make a profit. They're companies that are, delivering value. They're not serving any kind of taxpayers or political constituency. Their incentive is always going to be continual growth and expansion. And sometimes these companies will consolidate and buy each other out. The company that owns ShotSpotter, I think, was at one time looking into buying Geolytica, the predictive policing company. So I think just having an awareness of knowing that these technologies are not a silver bullet, that they reflect the priorities of the people who are using them, and being aware that the best interest of the company that's supplying these technologies isn't necessarily the same as the interest of the residents of the city.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, and I'd also add that first of all, Little Rock Police Department doesn't target anyone. We target crime, so wherever that is, that's where we are. But on to what you were saying about ShotSpotter, all of these forms of technology are really tools for us. The thing about ShotSpotter is whenever a shot is detected, a call goes straight to emergency communications, which goes straight to the nearest patrol unit, so they know exactly where to go. So that's an interesting tool in itself. Whereas if you're not in an area where ShotSpotter is, then you're relying on someone to call 911 and talk about it or tell what they heard. So uh, they're all tools, and ShotSpotter is just a tool that we use um, to help us in fighting crime. And also it displaces crime, right? Any area where ShotSpotter is and people who, fire a weapon, if you're in that area, we're on our way. So but what happens is it displaces crime. So now crime is going to leave this area and it's going to go somewhere else. And so then you have to get your handle on things of that nature in those other places where crime is displaced. So they're all tools, like Connor said, and you have to find the one that works best with the things that you're seeing in your city.
Okay, thank you all very much. Moving on to our next question, actually our last question of the evening, a pre-written question. And again, if any audience members have any questions, please put them in the Q&A function. Going back to you, Mr. Edwards, what problems or issues do you think could be solved with the technology that we aren't currently using now?
Oh, geez, man, I don't know. I'm really excited about. I don't know about any that we aren't currently using, but I'm really excited about what drones can do futuristically. Um, I can see in the future maybe drones being at several of our substations and going out, and whenever there's a crime area that directly connected to that area, go directly to that area and allow us access immediate. So there's plenty of ways we can use it. I don't necessarily know how about crimes that we've seen that we haven't been able to use technology, if that was your question.
Sure, absolutely. And Connor Thompson, the same question to you. What do you think we aren't using technology to help with that we could be doing now?
I think I could really envision, if I'm just imagining, seeing existing technology and seeing the potential of what perhaps it could do. I could imagine a situation where these automated license plate readers become so ubiquitous that they could effectively replace the existing traffic stops that a lot of armed police officers currently make. When you one aspect of traffic stops is that it's the most common way that and most people have an interaction with a police officer, and it is also one that I think from both the perspective of the officer and sometimes the people being pulled over, it can be one of the most fraught interactions between a police officer and a person. You think about the different phenomena of like driving while black. That often comes down to these traffic stops, and I think I could envision perhaps a situation where we as a society say, these automated license plate readers have become so ubiquitous that when a traffic violation occurs, when someone runs the red light, when they or even don't have tags on their cars, or tags is expired, a lot of the bases that usually form when traffic stops take place, that instead of a officer in a vehicle pulling that person over, and all of the consequences that can come out of making a traffic stop, that instead they're mailed their ticket, and potentially I could see something like that. I think the reason why I think that could be interesting, but also perhaps would not be sort of immediately popular, is often the traffic violation that occurs that is the basis for someone being pulled over is really just the beginning of a criminal investigation. We talk in criminal procedure courses in law school about pretextual stops, where essentially you utilize the traffic violation as the basis to pull over someone's car, and then that becomes the basis to pursue a much more kind of invasive or search, or pursuing broader forms of investigation for that individual. And if we could see algorithm or automated forms of traffic control replacing those traffic stops that are often pretextual in nature, I could see a lot of benefit to something like that, or even to just unarmed officers making traffic stops, which a few scholars have also suggested. Ultimately, it would be about reducing the number of interactions individuals have with an armed agent of the state, and maybe could free us up to look into alternative responder models, especially for folks who are experiencing unhoused or a mental health crisis. Perhaps if there was ubiquitous enough technology that could aid in pursuing these other models, which I think we probably should be doing regardless.
Well, let me say this, just on that, we do have a CRT team for someone who is having a crisis. We have a special team with social worker and several officers that go out. The social worker speaks with said person or persons. And so we are trying to address those areas as well. And I think going back to what you said earlier, traffic stops and the fear in traffic stops. I think part of that for us is what I've been trying to do is humanize our officers more. They're your brothers, their sisters, their aunts. We like to feature them on our social media platforms when they do things. Officer of the month, or whoever receives Save a Life accreditation. So we want to feature them and try to make our officers more humanized, take a more humanized approach. Our assistant chief has said on one of our podcasts, he wants our officers out talking to people. We're taking a grassroots approach. Now that's part of one of the things we're doing so that we can get back and people can understand that a lot of these officers came from these same neighborhoods you're in. There's some of the people that were in your shoes 10, 15, 20 years ago. So it's all about your approach to things as far as I'm concerned. But just in that aspect alone, definitely want to make sure, people know that we're trying to humanize our officers more, show that some of the things that they do. We got police officers that teach gourmet chef classes. So, I mean, we just want to show that it's more than just somebody walking up to you, striking fear, to strike fear into you at a traffic stop. That's definitely not one. I mean, when the basis of a police officer, a police department is law enforcement. I mean, if you're breaking the law, yeah, we're going to stop you. We're going to talk to you. We're going to ask questions. Those are the things that happen. Our podcast has an actual episode, what to do if you get stopped by a police officer with the Little Rock Police Department, what they're looking for, why it takes them so long. This is the first time I've heard about unarmed officers approaching vehicles. Um, I don't know what that looks like because that's not the world we live in. But I'd be interested to see how that would work with some of the guys who have spent a lifetime, stopping vehicles. I mean, it really is a way to meet people. And again, we're a police department, so we're in the city. State police is on the interstates. They probably get a lot different type interactions when they're on the state. Those are people that probably are traveling through. A lot of ours are people that, like I said, live in the communities that one of our officers used to live in. So those are strengths that we're trying to exploit or get back to from a grassroots perspective.
I'll just add that I do know about the crisis response team, and Mallory, y'all's social worker, is a good friend of mine. And I was glad to see that there was a grant to expand the use of those social workers.
Yes, definitely a $500,000 grant. Yeah, we're adding 2 new social workers as well. So we'll have a total of 5 at some point. We've got officers already that's working with them now.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you all very much again for this evening. We just have one final question coming from our audience member, Linda McAteer. Linda, and I think this is maybe a little bit geared more toward you, Connor Thompson, but Linda asks, has anyone found a connection with the predictive policing software companies and the prison system? Do they have the same owners or the same stockholders?
Yeah, that's probably going to be more Connor.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about Geolytica, that company that I identified in particular. I would say if I were to guess, I would say there's probably some kind of information sharing as far as individuals who might be on probation or parole, because that is often a basis of how different kinds of arrests can take place. If someone has a parole violation, that would be what I would think would be perhaps the most direct connection to the prison system. But it's a good question because yeah, we do see the for-profit prison industry, which is kind of its own can of worms. And all I'll just say, just if we're wrapping up, is I just want to make a plug for a couple of resources. I think if people are interested in exploring these questions further, one of the best resources I know for finding information about the expansion of different kinds of technology and its interaction with privacy is a group called the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Acronym EFF. They're based out of the Bay Area, and they do fantastic work. And I was looking at their stuff when I was preparing for this presentation. I would also give a big plug to Daniel's colleague Josie Lenora and her story on ShotSpotter that she did back when that contract was up for renewal and was approved unanimously by the City Board of Directors. Just say that if folks are interested in being involved in these decisions being made and being part of the democratic oversight of this process, is be aware of when these contracts come up for renewal, and be aware of when new forms of technology are up for approval by the City Board of Directors. Get involved.
Definitely
Yes.
want to second that. Yeah, you have to get involved. And again, like we said, Connor said earlier, these really are just tools that we're using and technology that we're using at present time. So we're thankful for the board and the mayor for allowing us the opportunity and finding the resources to get these software, these tools to help us in policing.
Perfect. And yes, second, the plug for Josie Lenore's reporting. I popped the link in the chat for anyone to see. Please go read that. It is a good read. And we don't have one final question. We just had one final comment from our audience member, Laura. She says it's not a question, but hooray for the CRT teams. So we can all agree on that. Those are good. And yes, if that is all you all have to say this evening, thank you very much. That does conclude our forum this evening. I want to thank again our participants for coming out or staying in this evening and sharing their ideas. And this has been the latest panel in our Issues That Matter series. Please share comments on this forum and any ideas for future forums by emailing comments at littlerockpublicradio.org, or go through any of the social media accounts of the Central Arkansas Library System, the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County, or Little Rock Public Radio. Again, this panel will air at a later date on KUAR FM 89.1. Stay tuned for updates on that. Just wanted to thank, on behalf of the Central Arkansas Library System, the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County, and Little Rock Public Radio. Thank you all for watching this evening. Thank you, Connor. Thank you, Mark, for taking part in this. And everyone have a great evening.
Enjoyed it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Okay.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.